Hello guys, Wolfhunter52 back with another Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls patch 2.4 build guide. Now, we've taken some time to talk about the Witch Doctor and the Crusader, and even the Monk and Wizard have gotten a little bit of attention here on the channel. But a class that I haven't looked at yet, and one who hasn't gotten much attention from me, has been the Demon Hunter. And so I have come on today in order to show you guys a Demon Hunter build that I'm running that a lot of people, it seems, are running here on the live server. And that is because it is actually a really good build. I was just looking at the leaderboard, and I think that at least a few people in the top 25 on the leaderboard right now are running this current setup. So let's take a look. Now, we are currently taking a look at the Marauder 6 set. Marauders used to be it used to be like literally the de facto most fun build to play in terms of Demon Hunter builds, but we did run into a problem, those of us who enjoyed Demon Hunter play. We ran into the problem that we just got royally nerfed into the ground throughout the different patches. But it appears that in 2.4 Marauder has gotten buffed back up again, so it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. And from what I've taken a look at in the PTR to come, it is only going to get stronger. So we are, since we're running the Marauder 6 set, we are going to need to obviously run 6 pieces of Marauder. You're going to want the helm, the shoulders, the gloves, the chest, the pants, and the boots. Obviously you're going to want all ancients. I do not have all ancients. I've only got 3 ancient pieces of Marauder right now. But even with that, I'm able to run. I just finished a Greater Rift 65 before I started this video, so it's definitely useful, but I'll get into that. So for the Marauder 6 piece, you're gonna want to try and roll extra sentry damage where you can. Maybe focus on some extra cluster arrow damage, but it's not really necessary to me. So I'll just go over with you the pieces you are going to need for the build, and then we'll go over skills and Kanai Cube and stuff like that. So obviously to run the 6-piece Marauder, you need all 6 pieces of the Marauder set, as I've already said. You're also going to want to run the Wraps of Clarity. This is going to make it so that you can get some more damage mitigation at the times when you have to use your hatred generator, because we are running focus and restraint. So as a result of that, you are going to have to cycle between your resource generator and your resource spender. You're also going to want the new belt, Zoe's Secret. You take between 8 and 9% less damage for every companion you have active. I currently have an 8.9 roll, and since, as you can see here around me, we've got the wolf, the spider, the boar, the raven, the bat, and 2 ferrets. So that's 7 pets, or 7 companions. So 7 by 8.9 is, let's see, 9 by 7 is 63 minus 0.7 is, so that's a good 60%, or, so that's almost 60% damage reduction. So this belt is absolutely mandatory. You cannot run without this. You're also going to need the Bombardier's Rucksack. This used to be our good friend even back when we were running Marauders before, and now it's been revamped so that you can have it roll extra sentry damage between 75 and 100%. I've got a 98% sentry damage quiver going here, so I'm pretty content with that. Also, you are absolutely going to need a Manticore crossbow. I lucked out and I got an ancient, but even as you can see, the extra cluster arrow damage isn't the greatest. But even with that said, you're using it mostly for its secondary ability to reduce the hatred cost of your cluster arrows. I got a 44% one, so you know it's not the best, but every little bit of it's going to help. Because the less I have to spend on cluster arrow, the more cluster arrows you can spam out. And since cluster arrow is going to be your main damage dealer, you want to be able to spam as many of these as possible. Finally, you're going to want a Hellfire Amulet. This Hellfire Amulet is by no means the greatest. I'm trying to currently reroll the attack speed to critical hit damage. But the important thing is you are going to want one of the following 5 passive skills. You are going to want either Custom Engineering, Awareness, Ballistics, Ambush, or Cold a Week on your Hellfire Amulet. Whichever one you get on Hellfire, you can choose the other 4 and put them in your passives. But these are absolutely mandatory for this build if you want to be able to do the most amount of damage and go to the higher grade of roofs. Now, for our actual skills, we're going to run Evasive Fire Focus, so this will give us back some extra hatred so that we can spam our cluster arrow a little more. We're going to be using cluster arrow shooting stars. This is a physical build. We're using it for those 600% damage rockets that it shoots out, which comes out to be quite a bit of damage thanks to all the multipliers that we're using in this build. You're going to run Sentry Polar Station because you need something to proc Cold a Week and your Bane of the Trapped. You're going to use Vengeance Seethe so that you can get some extra hatred back and just deal some extra damage. We're using Vault Tumble so that you aren't spamming through your discipline with Vault all the way, though if you're not careful you can still spam through your discipline anyway, so look out for that. And then companions, since we're getting all the companions from the Marauder set itself, it doesn't matter which one you pick. I just chose Wolf Companion because I'm used to using Wolf Companion. But you're getting all the effects of every companion when you hit this button with Marauder, so it's not super important. And again, passive skills: Awareness, Ballistics, Ambush, Cold a Week, and Custom Engineering. If you don't have a Hellfire Amulet, if you don't want to use a Hellfire Amulet, then I would recommend dropping Ambush here and just going with Awareness, Ballistics, Custom Engineering, and Cold Week. For Legendary Gems, I want to go over these real quick so I don't forget. You are going to be running the Taiguk, you're going to be running the Bane of the Trapped, and you're going to be running Zay's Stone of Vengeance. you want to be really careful to try and distance yourself as much as possible from the enemies, because the farther you are away from them, the more damage you are going to do to them, thanks to Zays. It's also going to make it so that you can survive longer because you'll be kiting using the sentries and whatnot. For your Kunai passives, you're going to need Dawn. This is basically mandatory for the reduced cooldown for Vengeance. You can either run the Visage of Goons to get the Darkheart rune for Vengeance, or I've seen people running the Cloak of the Garwolf, which I don't have here in the cube right now, but it would make it so that you have 3 wolf companions instead of just the one, which would bring you up to 9 pets, so you'd have like over 70% damage reduction, and that is just ridiculous to have for this build. And then in the ring slot, of course, you're going to run Convention of Elements, so you can get that extra damage when it rolls to physical. For your Paragon points, you can choose to add to Max Hatred if you absolutely want to. I find that I don't tend to run out of Hatred because of how I rotate my skills. But if you're worried about Hatred, go ahead and max that out. Max out movement speed, of course, before you do anything else. And then I just dumped everything else into Dexterity for some extra damage and toughness and whatnot. In your offense tab, go for cooldown reduction first, I would say. Then get both of your crits knocked out, and then worry about attack speed. For defense, resist all, armor, life percent, life regen. Utility, start with your resource cost reduction, then do area damage, then you can worry about life on hit and gold find. And the only thing that's left is to show you guys the gameplay, which if you aren't interested in gameplay, you can go ahead and log off right here, and I want to thank you for watching ahead of time. But if you do want to see some gameplay, we're going to go ahead and run we'll run another 65, I think, just so you can see that I can run 65, and you can get an idea of how we're running the build. So, very first thing you want to do, set up your sentries. Try and set them up so that they'll deal with your enemies. But you also want to try and set them up a little bit farther away from your enemies because of Zays. Because Zays bonus also applies to your sentries. So the further they are from your enemies, the more damage they are going to be able to do. But at the same time, make sure that you do not get super close to your enemies, because as a demon hunter, we are inherently squishy, and if you get too close, then you are going to get hit by something, and it will most likely kill you. Like, 65 is no joke. From the instant you get to like greater rip 65 up is when you really can't afford to be sloppy, because your enemies will try and one-shot you, and sometimes they'll succeed depending on what kind of enemy you're dealing with. Like, these savage beasts have a tendency of one-shotting me when I'm not careful. But as soon as your Convention of Element rolls around to physical, spam the ever-loving crap out of Cluster Arrow. Like, just keep hammering on that button until the physical buff is gone. and then go back to the rotation of evasive fire and then cluster arrow. In order to make sure that I don't run out of resource, I tend to do 2 evasive fires for every cluster arrow that I cast. This just is a surefire way that I'm not running out of hatred and that I'm constantly able to attack, because you are trying to keep those Taiguk stacks stacked up, and the best way to do that is to keep firing cluster arrow. But sometimes you're not around enemies to cluster arrow, so if you're not super careful, there is the chance that you are going to drop off your Taiguk stacks, and then you'll have to start from 0 again, and that is a huge loss of both damage and toughness for you when you have to keep restarting your Taiguk stacks. But if you're careful and if you do it right, then you aren't going to worry about death too often. So long as you keep everything at bay, then you can just basically sit back and mow everything down using your sentry's cluster arrows. Oh, almost died right there.